So let's get right into it. When we think of the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar, we usually remember it as, a really painful family drama. But what if I told you it's also one of the most masterfully crafted narratives in the entire book of Genesis? It's filled with these incredible literary echoes and deep theological connections that really challenge everything we think we know about blessing and being chosen. Let's unpack it.
It all kicks off with these words right here. This is the sound of pure desperation. Sarai, Abram's wife, is at the very center of a divine promise, but she is staring down the crushing reality of her own infertility. And these words she speaks, they set in motion a chain of events that is going to ripple through generations.
Okay, so to really get this story, you have to understand the core tension. It's a massive collision between a divine promise of incredible scale and a very human, very painful problem.
On one hand, you've got God's word to Abram, I will make you a great nation. I mean, an unbelievable, world-changing promise. And on the other hand, you have this stark, simple fact. Sarai, bear him no children. This isn't just a plot point. This is the central crisis that's going to test everyone's faith to the absolute limit.
And when faith gets tested, what do we humans so often do? We try to fix things ourselves, right? And that's exactly where Sarai's plan comes in. A very human solution to a divine dilemma, and a pivotal moment of faltering trust.
The plan, as you can see, just unfolds so fast. Step 1, Sarai suggests using her Egyptian maid, Hagar, as a surrogate. Step 2, Abram just goes along with it. Step 3, Hagar gets pregnant, and boom, almost immediately the whole family just implodes. By step 4, contempt and cruelty have totally taken over, and Hagar, pregnant and abused, is literally fleeing for her life. The human solution creates an absolute human disaster.
Okay, now hit pause right there, because what seems like a simple, messy family tragedy is actually something way more profound. The biblical authors are doing something incredibly clever with the language they're using here. They are intentionally replaying a much older story of failure.
And this is no accident. The writers are using very specific, repeated phrases to create a direct literary link, an echo, all the way back to the story of the fall of humanity in the Garden of Eden. By doing this, they're signaling that this family's crisis isn't just some personal mistake, it's a reenactment of that foundational human failure to just trust God's word and his timing.
This slide lays out the evidence, and it is just fascinating when you look at the language side by side. So in Eden, Eve took the fruit and gave it to Adam. Here, Sarai took Hagar and gave her to Abram. In Eden, Adam passively hearkened to the voice of his wife, and here Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. Even God's questions echo. To Adam, it's where are you? To Hagar, who's fled to the wilderness, it's whence camest thou? It's a complete replay of that foundational human failure. But here's the turn. Just as the story echoes human failure, it reveals something absolutely radical about God's character. The narrative's focus shifts from the tent of Abram and Sarai out into the harsh wilderness, and the spotlight lands squarely on Hagar, the Egyptian slave girl.
Out there, completely alone, totally vulnerable, Hagar has a direct encounter with God. An angel finds her and gives her a promise that sounds an awful lot like the one given to Abram. Her descendants will be a multitude. And she's told to name her son Ishmael, which literally means God hears, because God has heard her suffering. I mean, this is a staggering moment. An outsider, a slave, is seen, she is heard, and she is blessed.
And in response to this, Hagar does something that's never happened before. She gives God a name. Thou, God, seest me. This is the very first time in the entire biblical story that a human being names God. And it's not the patriarch Abram who does it. It's Hagar, the fugitive Egyptian handmaid. She names God based on her own personal experience of being seen in her absolute darkest moment.
And the place itself is named to commemorate this revelation, Bir Lahairoi, the well of the living one who sees me. Hagar's pain and her rescue are now permanently written into the landscape and into the very story of God.
But the story doesn't end there. Years later, after Sarah finally gives birth to her own son Isaac, the conflict explodes all over again, and Hagar and Ishmael are cast out for good. And this is where the biblical authors present their most unsettling and brilliant literary connection, the parallel between Abraham losing Ishmael to the wilderness and then being asked to sacrifice Isaac on a mountain.
So the writers do this very intentionally. They place these two narratives, Genesis 21 and 22, right next to each other, and they load them up with repeated words and themes, basically forcing us to read them as a pair. They're making a powerful point. Abraham's ultimate test of faith with Isaac cannot be understood apart from what he did to Ishmael.
And the parallels laid out here are just stunning. Both stories start with Abraham rising early in the morning. In one, he places the burden of supplies on Hagar's shoulder. In the other, he places the burden of wood on Isaac's back. Ishmael is cast under one of the bushes to die. Isaac is saved by a ram caught in the bush. And in both stories, rescue comes when an angel of God calls down from the heavens. Abraham is forced to face the near death of both his sons, linking the consequences of his failure with his ultimate test of faith.
So where does all this leave us? Well, it brings us to the story's resolution and a really crucial theological theme. While Isaac is the one chosen to carry the specific covenant line, God's care and blessing for Ishmael is just immense and totally unconditional.
The narrative makes this really clear distinction. Isaac is the son of the covenant promise, the one through whom a specific lineage will flow. But Ishmael is profoundly the blessed son. Divine blessing isn't presented like a zero-sum game. There is more than enough for both.
I mean, just look at the sheer scope of God's promise for Ishmael. God says it explicitly, "I will bless him, make him fruitful, and multiply him very, very much." He's going to be the father of 12 rulers and become a great nation. These are not small little consolation prizes. This is an epic, world-shaping blessing given to the son who was cast out. And that's what we're left with. This ancient story isn't just about one family from long ago. It forces us to ask some much bigger questions. What does it mean that God sees and hears and blesses the outsider, the vulnerable, the one who's been cast out from the chosen family? And what, then, is our responsibility to them today?